The Books That Shape Me is proudly sponsored by WinStar Insurance Group, right out of Cedar Park, Texas. Owned and operated by Stephanie Dew, my dear friend. Early on in her career, she knew what it was like to feel undervalued. And she vowed that if she ever had an opportunity to be in leadership, she was going to do it different. And she does. She values each of her employees and her clients with the utmost integrity and respect and kindness that you'd ever imagine. So they've got a specialty in their business. They take care of first responders. They've got wineries, breweries, childcare facilities, and the employees themselves are so excited to be there. And they talk about how they haven't felt valued anywhere else like they do there. So it's hats off to Stephanie and WinStar Insurance Group because our values align with faith, trust, and authenticity. Thank you, Stephanie, from the bottom of my heart and those of us that hang out with the books that shaped me. Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of The Books That Shape Me. I'm your host, Angie Smith. And today I am joined by the beautiful, powerful Miss Loree Tamayo. Loree, thank you so much for spending some time with me today and being ready and willing to tell your story. Welcome.
Oh, thank you, Angie. You're so sweet.
Well, I'm so excited to hear what you've got to share because I've only known you just a little short time. But in that time that I was there, I had an opportunity to come out to the property. Yesterday's gone. And I got a little bit of a tour and I got just a snippet about what you're up to. And I just really want to say thank you for the work that you do that meets women where they're at, educates, empowers, and helps get them into the next leg of their journey.
Oh, well, it's my pleasure, and I'm just a vehicle. The God, and the Lord does it, and it just is, I guess, humbling that I can do that work. So
I love that. I love that. Well, while our podcast here is called The Books That Shape Me, it really is an opportunity to just kind of do a deep dive into who you are as a person and as a leader. And so, yes, I want to hear about any books, but also moments and mentors that have kind of impressed who you are and how you show up as a leader today. So really the floor is yours. We'll kind of start as far back as you want to go. If you want to talk about childhood, if you want to talk about schooling, where do you think you'd like to start sharing your story with us today?
Well, I would probably say that when I started my healthcare career, I think for me, Christianity's always been important to me, and reading the Bible and connecting with my purpose through there, even though I'm definitely not a finished product, it helped me. And I remember I had graduated with my first degree rather young. I think I got through college in 3 years, and I was already a year younger in high school, when I graduated. And so I was having a hard time finding a job. I had a bachelor's degree in marketing, and I went another year and thought, well, I'll go back to school for something else because I'm having a hard time finding a job in Amarillo, Texas. No wonder I was having a hard time with marketing in Amarillo, Texas, but I didn't want to leave my family. And I remember I went to a church with my friend. I grew up Presbyterian, but she went to the Nazarene church, which is sort of Pentecostal type. And I remember I went to church and I was frustrated because I'm just like, I want to get my purpose. I need a purpose. I've got to have a reason, to live, to be, because I'm done going to school, and I think I was just real wound up in that church service, and they had the altar call. Well, when you're Presbyterian, you don't walk up to the front, and I went up to the front and I was bawling, and I got on my knees and everything and prayed and told God, I'll do whatever it is you want me to do.
Yes.
And I had no idea that I was going to get into healthcare because I didn't want to be in healthcare. I wanted to be like running a mall or a Dillard's or being a fashion merchandiser or something, And I started applying for jobs after that prayer. And within 2 weeks, I had a job running a nursing home.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh.
And I remember I was really scared because I was like, I don't want some old person to grab me with sticky hands, is what I thought. And I remember I'm walking down the hall with the girl training me to be this assistant administrator in this nursing home. And this little old lady grabs me and she's a patch over her eye. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what I was really scared of. And she's sitting there with another little old lady, and she goes, "Ooh, sweetie, cold hands, warm heart. You know what else
Oh.
they say?" And the lady next to her is like, "Oh, Miss Shockey, you're scaring her to death." And she's laughing, and I'm standing there, and my eyes are this big, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh." And she said, "The other part is stinky feet and no sweetheart." And then she just dies laughing. And I literally that day fell in love with healthcare and the persons that are being taken care of, and it was just a beautiful thing. And I have been blessed ever since in my life because I told God, I'll do whatever you want me to do. So it was a neat story. It's a neat thing. And then I went from there to, doing a lot of different things in healthcare. So all the way to running hospitals and all that kind of good stuff. But it came from, I guess, just being able to surrender and maybe those Bible stories that you read where when somebody surrenders, their whole life changes. And I think that probably is one good book story, I would say, for me, and one good life altering moment, because there's been a few in life where you feel God or you feel the Spirit or you feel like this is for sure. And that always makes me feel very secure,
Wow.
Yeah, I like that.
I think it's pretty beautiful and interesting that the one thing that you thought you were scared of happened really quick. like you're like, I don't want some old, and then like right off the bat. So it's almost like that little fear didn't get a chance to grow into a big old boogeyman in your brain, right? It didn't get the chance to grow. It got nipped and it got twisted into love.
Yeah. I loved that place. I was there for a year and a half, and I saw her every day. She was funny. I liked her a lot.
Did she have the patch the whole time?
Yes, she did. She did. She had a patch. Yep. It was okay. She was still cute. She was still cute. There was another little lady there that was in a wheelchair, and she, I guess, had not been taken care of well at another nursing facility. And she was like contracted to where all she could do is sort of be leaned down in her wheelchair and pedal with her little feet. And she was demented, and she'd make all these little noises all day. I loved that little lady. She'd come into my office and talk gibberish, and I'd just talk back to her. And I just, I had a long career in the long-term care arena and before the hospital arena, and I've always loved older people. And what's funny is when you look back and you look back at that story, and then when I really look back at God knew what he was doing, because here's what's funny. I was an only child, and I lived in a neighborhood with no kids. So I played with these two retired teachers all day before I went to school, like before school time years. So I hung out with these two retired teachers. Then my grandma moved in with us, and she lived with me till about 12. And then at 13, my other grandma moved in with us. So I feel like God had this whole training program happening. He's like, I know she's not going to do marketing. I've got this planned out. I've been teaching her whole life.
Wow.
And she just needs to get in the program with me and finally give up, and then I'll show her what she's supposed to do.
Goodness.
So that is sort of funny. When I looked back at that, I thought, he knew what he was doing the whole time. I just wasn't on the same team as him on understanding what I was supposed to do.
Well, you know what? In the privilege of having these conversations, I feel like that's a recurring theme. One phase of our life prepares us for the next, and we don't even know it, right? We're heads down, we're eyes up, we're trying to do the thing, and the next thing you know, you get a bit of a curveball in your life, but you've been uniquely prepared for such a time as this.
Yes, you are so right. That is true. That's a good segue for what happened next. I mean, just knowing that now I still have my healthcare business, but I run a women's shelter. And what came out of that was I had an abusive situation, but really what it was a lifetime of abuse that I hadn't recognized until a terrible situation sort of brought it all to the surface to know, okay, my brain isn't working really right. I'm making bad decisions with the partners I choose. And I literally have some dysfunctional thought processes and some things that are not healthy in my personal life, even though I'm okay professionally and I look all shiny and pretty and all this good stuff. I had a mess in my personal side of the street. And I left that situation, and then that made me do a deep dive into, okay, why did I get in that situation in the first place? And how do I get better? And all these things. And what was interesting is when I came out the other side of it, because it was horrible while I was going through the middle of it,
Yeah.
trying to get healed and think right and not be traumatized and all that, I wanted to help other people. And so I started a women's shelter. And, you know, it was like right at the end of opening the women's shelter, someone asked me, they said, would you ever want a do-over? Because you sort of have had a pretty yucky life, around men, you've had some bad stuff. And I sat there for a minute. I said, no, I think that this is the masterpiece he was creating this whole time. I think the Lord allowed this stuff to happen because he knew he was going to do something good with it. And I don't want to do over because I wouldn't be here right now. And I wouldn't have done this. And he wouldn't have done this through me. And so I think everything divinely happened to me throughout my life so that I could do something magnificent in this world to help other people. And I would have never been that person. I would have never been that person. Yes, did I have to suffer like Joseph, Joseph got put in jail. I didn't have it that bad, or maybe I did. But on the other end of Joseph's story, something great came out of it. And so I love his story.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite Bible stories, is how he had to go through all this hardship, but God had a plan the whole time.
Yes, he did.
And the plan was to save many lives. And that's the way I look at my life. Even though I'm not as great as Joseph, I still think it's really cool. And I believe that's what God did. So yeah, I have a lot of Bible stories for you. I love Bible stories, and I'm not one Bible thumper person. And I'm not one of those that, what I love about the Bible and a relationship with God versus religion is, look at all the people that are in the Bible. They are hot messes. Hot messes. He didn't
So we can relate.
We can all relate. I'm like, you look at the Bible and you go, there ain't anybody good in there. Only good one was Jesus. And he was around a whole bunch of other people that were hot messes. So I sit there and I'm like, this is such a good book to read. Why in the world are people like, I don't want to read it. I don't want to do it. Because it's some soap opera type stuff in there too. You're like, wow,
it's getting real.
So I've met a couple of different counselors. They say they're Bible counselors. I'm like, what is a Bible counselor? They're like, I'm a counselor, but I use Bible stories to relate to you.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what do you mean? And the guy said, well, like Rahab, or like the lady that, oh goodness, Sarah had Ishmael with, or not Sarah, but
Hagar.
Thank you there. Yes. So he said Hagar was the first sex trafficked woman. Because really, if you look at people, you can actually put them in current day times in our lingo, but she was sex trafficked.
Yes,
she was enslaved, and she was forced to have sex and reproduce a child, all these things. And he goes, so that's what we do when we do Bible counseling. We use those stories. And I'm like, huh. And so I use those stories at times when I'm having troubles and thinking about things that are difficult for me. And then what's always great about those stories is there's usually a really awesome ending. God always writes the best endings to stories, including mine and including a lot of the women I help.
Yes.
I always tell groups of men that come out to the property, or if I go out to something where there's a bunch of men, I always start with this because they're always sort of worried, like, oh, this is the chick that helps abuse women and she probably hates us, and I don't. There's bad men, bad women, whatever. I always tell them, you know what? God writes the best stories.
Yes.
So it took a man to get us in a bad situation, but I will tell you this, every day, men are my biggest donors and my biggest volunteer base and my biggest helpers. So isn't that a wonderful redemption story that men are making that happy ending for Yesterday's Gone and the women? It's just so cool. So I love the way God writes the story.
He's a master storyteller.
If you'll let him write it. I fiddled around a lot and sort of got in the way of his story,
But you started off on the right foot with that blank check of yes.
Yes. And then I fiddled around a little. But same thing with the people in the Bible. They have issues too. And then they finally get there. Eventually.
We can go Old Testament, New Testament, Peter. Yep. We got all kind of examples of he calls us, he qualifies us. We still mess up. He still gives us another chance.
I know. Thank goodness. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I tease and say I'm going to get a lean-to in heaven because I also argue with God a lot, and he, I'm like, it's okay. I have a relationship. If I can argue with him, I have a relationship.
Yes.
But it's funny. My husband says I do it too much. He says, you argue a lot with him. You like to tell him your opinion quite a bit, don't you? And I'm like,
Well,
yes, I do.
So my business, Angie Smith Summit Consulting,
Yeah.
that consulting part, I go back to the Old Testament. I think it's Isaiah. I forget, 119. I forget. But that's where the scripture says, when God says, come, let us reason together.
I love that.
That's when I put that word in my business.
Love that.
And I share that because I feel like that's what you're doing. You're reasoning with him, and with maybe a little spicy energy.
Yeah,
But
sure.
he invites us to that because we do have relationships.
I love that. I love that you put that in your title.
Yeah.
I think that's wonderful.
Yeah. Well, also just to close back on just the redemption of, like you said, when you say that sometimes you have some hesitancy from men coming to visit yesterday's gone property. And I experienced that when I was there, sitting there having the barbecue and hanging out with the fellowship. I was chatting with one of the gentlemen volunteers, and he was all in. He was serving. He had served that day to prepare the meal. He served regularly. And I just thought this is a really beautiful, just full circle experience.
Mm-hmm. It's wonderful to see that. And I think I know the gentleman you were talking about, Byron, and that man comes out to our property every week when it's rainy, and we've got grass growing. We have 7 acres to mow. He put together a team of men that mow my property, that property, for free.
Wow.
Every week. That saves at least $10,000 a year for us,
Wow.
And he also gives to us. He also helps plan events. He does anything. He comes out and does free maintenance every so often on different things. And I just love that. And then I've got several other men that literally, like, they connect us, they give to us, I'm just astonished. And for me, I was already past my bitterness, and anger with what had happened to me, and labeling, and having some dysfunctional thoughts about men. And then, I realized everybody's just a little bit broken in the situations. And any man that's abusive is just broken, and it's just the way it comes out for them. And they just either haven't worked through their issues and emotions are coming out sideways, or their shame or whatever. And unfortunately, you coincide with their pathway. Not all men are that way, and that was the thing that I had to learn is there's not bad men. I shouldn't ever say that term. There's broken men, and there's men that have got it a little bit more together, and there's men that really have it together. And in my situation, again, nothing's right when someone's abusive to you, but I look back and I can say, okay, I know why this person had these issues, and I know I can forgive them, and I can go, okay, they're just broken, and I was a little bit broken that I was willing to put up with it, and I was willing to allow it. Something was broken in me, in my identity, and in my ability to set boundaries, and my self-worth, and all those things that made me allow that. And so I always, with the ladies on the property and with our curriculums and everything we do, I always circle back to, I don't want to worry about him. I don't want to hear about him. I understand what he did was wrong. We're not discounting that, but we're on you right now, because the only thing you have control over is you. You don't have control over him. Why did you stay? What happened here? What were you believing that let you stay or pick him in the first place? And again, I know what happened was horrible, but if we don't fix this, you're going to keep doing the same thing. And the only reason I can say that without getting hit or whatever they want to say or get mad at me is I had to do that for myself, because the problem was me, because I didn't know who I was in Christ. I didn't know who I was, as far as worthiness. And I had to work on that so that I didn't repeat the same cycle.
You had to live it, face it, work through it, get the healing, accept it. And I think I heard you share earlier, I don't know if it was right now or earlier, but 8 years? 8 years?
8 years of counseling. Now so basically I did 3 years twice a week just to get back to the person I was before I married the worst abuser, I guess I would say. And I got back to baseline. I was back to the woman that I was prior to marrying him. And I said, well, that isn't good enough because why'd I pick him in the first place? Why am I on? This is the second failed marriage. And so I was pointing the finger back at myself. I was unwilling to be a victim. I'm like, I need to fix me.
Yeah.
So I told my counselor, I said, you need to help me figure this deal out because I'm where I was, but something went horribly wrong in my life to make me get to this place where I picked him.
Yeah.
And this is how bad it was. I picked him. I didn't need him to live off of him.
Yeah.
I didn't have any kids with him. The only reason I needed him is I didn't know who I was without him. And I felt that I needed a man to be worth anything. And I'm like, wow, that's some pretty screwed up stuff. I told my counselor and I said, and I'm owning this and I want to finish working on it. And it took 5 more years to get to a place to where I finally cleaned out everything, and came to terms with everything and came out of denial over a lot of things that were very much keeping me stuck.
Yeah.
And I wish it would have happened quicker. I'm pretty stubborn, I guess, I mean, I denied that my father was very, very abusive growing up. And I denied that I was picking bad men subconsciously or broken men or dysfunctional men subconsciously. And it took about 3 more years for my counselor to get me to agree with, yeah, my dad was horribly abusive.
Yeah.
Horribly. And it was a generational thing where I never got hit. Even my primary abuser never hit me. It was all psychological. And she made me eventually realize, yeah, your great grandma was psychologically abused and financially abused. Your grandma was psychologically abused and married an alcoholic the first time and then married a psychologically abusive person the second time. And your mom's with a psychologically abusive man. And she tells you, Loree, when you cry about how your dad's screaming and cussing at you, she says, he's not abusing you. He doesn't hit you and he provides for you. So you were told and taught from a very young age that it wasn't abuse, but this man was screaming at the top of his lungs, turning bright red, gritting his teeth, using the terrible cuss language, and he was stomping the floor because you spilled the milk. And so it took her, and she should have done this a long time ago, but it took her throwing a pillow on the floor and recreating that scene and asking me what, cussing, screaming, yelling at a pillow. And she said, what would you do if you saw that on the street? And I said, I would grab that kid and run and call the police and make sure that man never gets to be around that child again. And she looked at me and she goes, you went through that multiple times a day, every day of your life. Are you willing to say now that your dad was abusive? And I said, I'm willing to say that he was. I don't think he intended it. And she goes, that's okay, but it was abusive. And you've got to come to terms with that. And so then we started doing the work on that it shaped me. 0 to 5 are your formative years. That's what caused the template to think that it was okay to get treated that way and that it was just normal. And then that also causes a template to make you attracted to that. Unfortunately, you aren't consciously doing it.
Right.
And what was interesting is the second little aha moment that she had with me was I kept dating all these guys and I was sort of doing like this dating, I date one, date another one, date, after my divorce. And I realized, I thought, I couldn't really attach to anybody. I was desperately wanting to find somebody because I didn't want to figure out who I was. I wanted to find a man to tell me who I was because I was lost. And so I was trying to solve that problem with another man. And thankfully, I believe God just blocked that for me. And I dated several nice guys. And I think on the third guy that was a nice guy, I came in and I said, oh, I broke up with Frank. And I said, I don't know why. He's great looking. He's got a great job. He's nice to me. I love doing stuff with him. He's just, I just can't get attracted. I just can't get attracted. There is something that just isn't attractive about him to me. And she looked at me, and I guess she was probably at her wit's end with me because she'd been working on me for a while, and I wasn't getting it the nice way. And so she looks at me and she goes, "You want to know why? You you want to know? You want to know?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah." I'm like, "Golly, she seems a little agitated." I'm like, well, "Okay." And so she says, "Because he's normal." And I looked at her and I said, "Okay, you've said that to me before." She goes, "Oh, yeah, I have." She goes, "Loree, he's normal, so it doesn't feel attractive to you. You're not having to jump through all these hoops. You're not having to do all these things.
Calisthenics.
You're not having to do that, so you don't feel normal. You feel like it's boring. You feel like he's boring. You feel like something's wrong because you're not having to do what you used to have to do in all your relationships, including with your father. Morph yourself, act this way, act that way, pretend, whatever. So it feels awful to you." And I'm like, I said, "Wow, that's probably true, but I don't understand how is that happening inside of me and how do I not see it?" And she goes, "You don't even know it's happening. You just know it doesn't feel you're not attracted." And so I asked her, I said, "Okay, I'm going to need to read a book or something about this because I believe you. I'm willing to believe you, but I don't get it." So I read this book by Pia Mellody called The Love Addiction. And I didn't read it. I actually listened to it. And it's all
That
these
counts.
Yeah, it still counts because the listening was better for me. I think I do better listening
Me
to
too.
books. Yeah. And I'm just sitting there going, "Oh my goodness. Oh my." As I'm hearing the stories, I'm like, "Oh, that's me. Oh my gosh. She's been right this whole time. And I've went through 3 more years of trauma or terrible stuff because I wouldn't listen to my counselor."
Oh,
And now I see it and I'm like, my eyes are wide open and I'm like, wow, I really, really was
yeah.
attracted to dysfunction,
Yeah.
attracted to me having to do all those calisthenics, attracted to people that treated me less than for some reason, which makes no sense.
Mm-mm.
And then I could do the work. But you have to open your eyes and believe it in order to do the work. And I find this sometimes with the ladies on the property and the ladies that we help in our support groups that yesterday's gone and the ladies that we take phone calls from is I usually sometimes have to say, until you're willing to come out of denial, you're not going to get any better.
Yeah.
So I need you to open your eyes.
Yeah.
You need to open your eyes. And sometimes when the ladies do our support group, we go through denial, we go through what is abuse, what is trauma, what is all these things. And it's sort of shocking. You can see like a light bulb go on.
Wow.
And you go, "Oh, you're getting it. She's
Yeah.
getting it.
Yeah.
She's getting that. Oh, this like me. Oh my goodness. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I didn't realize. Oh, I was told that wasn't abuse. Oh,
Yeah.
and they start then going, okay, well, this is not okay. I need to stand up for myself. I need to know that this isn't okay. And they start learning,
Mm-hmm.
but we're teaching them, okay, well, you don't have to divorce your husband necessarily because of it. You don't have to be mean or get mad or do anything aggressive. Let's just learn how to set a boundary.
Yeah.
Let's just learn how to know what
A
is
boundary,
okay and what
what a
is not
boundary
okay.
is.
What is a boundary? How do you set it? How do you set a consequence? How do you enforce a
Yes.
consequence? And it's sort of shocking how they don't even know that part. And you have to teach them.
Wow.
That's the biggest thing you got to teach them is teach them that it's okay to say no.
Yeah.
It's okay to say, "I'm leaving the room if you're going to continue to act that way." They didn't know that was okay. They didn't even know that they could do that.
Right.
They're like, "I can do that? Oh, yeah, you can do that."
Yeah.
And so that empowers people, and then it also empowers the relationship to function correctly. And in order to forgive people, you have to set boundaries,
Yeah.
or else how do you forgive? And so they can restore relationships. We've had a couple of relationships that were restored just
Wow.
because a lady knew how to stand up for themselves.
Yeah.
Most of those were psychological situations and things like that.
For me, my story is I had to learn I love you and that's not okay.
That's good.
Because in my growing up, I come from a broken home and dysfunction. I feel like when you just said the ladies didn't know they were allowed to say, I can leave this conversation if you're going to continue to be abusive. For me to figure out and even I did a lot of work in Al-Anon, the 12-step
You
program.
told me that, yes.
Yeah, where they tell you no is a complete sentence. And even that is confusing because I'm sitting
Mhm.
here thinking if I have the bravery and the guts to say no, I have to give 17 reasons why it's, and please don't be mad, but
Mhm.
just overcoming the people pleasing as well. It's just so much. So for my healing journey in my counseling time, I've learned what a boundary was. I did the boundaries class at church and I figured out the workbook and I watched the videos and I did the thing. And then I started trying to figure out, like you say, how to implement it and how to have a consequence with it, which is
Mhm.
challenging in itself.
Mhm.
And then I'm sitting there in the counselor's room and I'm just like hard on myself because I didn't follow through on the boundary that I set.
Mhm.
And it's like, I guess I'm just having to grow this backbone one vertebrae at a time. And she was like, well, how do you think everybody else does it?
I love that. I
You
love
know?
that.
So that's actually what I titled my chapter in Pieces to Purpose,
Oh, did
one
you?
vertebrae at a time.
Oh, good
So
for
that's my
you.
progress, right? And to know that it's okay to grow a little bit. We all grow a little bit. Everything you just unpacked for us is not something you're going to get in. When I sat down the first time in the Al-Anon room and I saw they had a laminated piece of paper with the 12 steps, I thought, okay, great. One step a month, I'll be done in 12 months. I'll be good.
Yeah, yeah.
It is, and I mean, like, whoa, it doesn't work that way. It's not that always upward clean trajectory to the right. Like it's like wonky and like when you just articulated earlier, like, why am I doing this? Like you're functioning, you're living, you're doing, and then
Mhm.
something, it's a disconnect
Yeah,
in
you're
our
totally
brain.
right. And it happens more well, if you can walk and eat and swallow and breathe without thinking about it, why would you not think other stuff happened without you thinking about it? It's totally normal.
Yeah.
And then you don't have to have any shame about it because it is proven that when anything happens traumatic or abusive, your brain rewires. And so it's not that you're a dumb person or, lazy or stupid or whatever. There's people that say that about people that get abused and they should have known better. And you're sitting here going, well, no, that isn't the science behind that.
Yeah.
But I usually don't have those conversations because why? They're not going to believe me anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. The one vertebrae at a time, and I think I love that. I love that it takes time, and I'm very impatient for things to change, and it takes practice. Practice. I remember my counselor telling me, "You gotta practice. You gotta practice setting boundaries." And when we talked to the ladies about setting boundaries, I say, "Let's start with something small
Mm-hmm.
and easy.
Mm-hmm.
Don't start big. Start with something little and see if you can do it.
Yeah.
And then start with something a little bigger and see if you can do it. Let's just practice now, and then we'll practice with them. Tell me something you don't like to do, and then
Yeah.
we practice, like, the scenario of us asking them to do it and all those kind of things, and they even cringe, even though they know they're playing with us, they're like, "Oh, I don't wanna say no to you," and you just think, "Oh, goodness gracious," but I get it because I was that type that didn't wanna say no either because there were repercussions for it, um, and with me and with the property and yesterday's gone and things, my whole goal is I want them to be able to stand on their own 2 feet so they can say no and not
Yeah.
have to need the person and,
Right.
they can't leave. They're stuck, and so they can't really say no because they're stuck. That's the worst hopeless situation a person can be in. And I think one other thing that you brought up that made me think of one other thing that I always say, and it seems to bring people great relief, and I have to remind myself of this. You can be healed to a certain degree, but not fully healed. You're a lot better, but there are days that you have good days and bad days. And I remember a group counselor telling me, as long as you're 60% better on average, you're doing marvelous.
Wow.
And nobody's 100% healed and stays that way. We all have good days and bad days, and we know how to get the resources we need to deal with those bad days. And it brought me a lot of peace
Mm-hmm.
because, I was judging myself like, "Golly, I'm still doing this wrong, that wrong. Didn't set that boundary right. I yelled at this person, yeah, whatever." And
Mm-hmm.
I was triggered by that and I thought, "Okay, but there are days I do really good, and then there's days I don't. And all I can do is just deal with, okay, I've got these resources and I can do it over. I can know that the next time I go through that situation, maybe it's like a building a muscle. I'll be a little stronger to do it a little
There
bit
you go.
better and not get triggered or whatever." And I think people just need to give themselves grace, especially like I'm harder on myself than I am any other human being. And that is still a hard process, but I try to give myself grace and forgive myself for when I don't do so awesome.
Yeah.
Because believe me, I'm a work in progress for sure.
We have a critic in our mind.
That inner critic, and it's not okay. It's okay to say, okay, next time I would like to do better. And I learned from this scenario, and I understand why I reacted the way I did. It makes sense. I've learned something today. And now that I've learned something, and now that I've sort of decided how I might reapproach it next time it happens, it's okay.
Yeah.
And not be like, why'd you do that, stupid? In our
Yeah.
head,
Yeah.
be like, okay, we learned something today. We learned, I had a bad meeting the other day with somebody. I called the person that was on the Zoom call with me, and I said, oh my gosh, that was awful. That meeting was awful. And I said, I was actually talking not very nice about the person I was in the meeting with because she was really rude. And I was sort of going on, and then I sat there and I stopped myself. I was like, okay, wait, what was going on with that person? Let me think about, maybe she wasn't trying to be rude. Maybe she's just awkward, or maybe she's just having a bad day or whatever. And then I said, I felt uncomfortable because I didn't know how to answer a couple of her questions either. So I'm blaming that on her being rude, but I really didn't answer those questions very well. And so then I'm sitting there as I'm talking to this person, I said, she actually did us a favor today, because 2 of those questions we need to know how to answer better. And I said, so we need to thank her for maybe acting a little perturbed that I didn't have the answers exactly like she wanted them, or I wasn't quite prepared, or whatever. And also just know that she had a background that she shared toward the end of the meeting that made a little bit more sense why the whole meeting was uncomfortable, maybe. And that I need to give her some grace to know she may just not know that she's coming across the way she's coming. And so I sort of unraveled that. Let me talk bad about this person that made me feel yucky and all this stuff. And then tried to learn something from it, and then try to just not talk bad about somebody, because that really doesn't do any good.
No. But you verbally processed, right?
Mhm.
You had the feels, you had a safe person to unpack,
Exactly.
peel those layers back, and then you were able to sit with it. And I feel like that's the practices that you're teaching the ladies, right? Like nobody's going to be perfect all the time. We're not robots. We're humans. We fall, we fail. How do I stop? How do I chase that root and learn the lesson?
Exactly. I love that. And that is the truth, is you've got to practice.
Yeah.
Everything takes practice. I mean, being a human being that's totally stable and got it together and uses all the emotion wheel and all these things, it takes practice. You don't get the, like in the workbook, we have the emotion wheel with all these myriad of emotions and all this stuff. And you don't get that overnight. So I have a funny story about that. I always like telling this story.
Tell it.
So after I left that abusive situation, I knew I had to have a counselor, because I was unraveling, and yet I still had this business, and I was very professional, and nobody would have known what was going on, but I was just not in a good spot. So go into the counselor, and I tell her sort of what's been happening. And she goes, well, how do you feel? Tell me how you feel. And I looked at her and I said, well, I feel bad. She goes, well, no, like, how do you feel? Are you scared? Are you this? Are you that? And I'm looking at her like, what? And I said, well, I really don't care how I feel. I just need to feel better, and I need to get on with it. I want this to go away, how I feel. And she's like, well, you can't even tell me how you feel. So how can I make it get better? I'm like, do you have a pill? Because I need to get with it. I need to get with it. Emotions are a waste of time. We got to keep on trucking. I've got stuff to do. I've got a business to run, and I don't want to feel bad. And she looked at me and she said, okay, where you're at right now, that may have worked for you for 48 years. It isn't going to work anymore. I'm sorry, you can't stuff anymore in that backpack you're carrying around. And I looked at her and I said, so what am I going to have to do? She goes, you're going to have to deal with it. And I think my eyes got big, and I said, okay, well, what does that mean? So she pops out that emotions wheel. And I look at her and she goes, pick out an emotion that you're feeling. And I thought, I can do a calculus 4 problem easier than doing this, because I hadn't just stuffed my emotions. Because when I was a child, I couldn't cry because my father would scream even louder at me and tell me to quit crying and scream even louder. So crying isn't an emotion. Sadness wasn't okay. And being loud or excited and having fun wasn't okay because I got yelled at because of that too.
Yeah.
And then, just all these emotions that with the abusers, like, I can't be upset with you. I can't tell you my feelings are hurt. I can't, so I'm not supposed to have emotions. I'm supposed to be a robot and I'm supposed to just produce.
And you're supposed to be pleasing.
And pleasing.
Yes.
Yes. I just need to be a Stepford wife is what I should probably
Yeah.
be. And so I'm just sitting here going, wow, I don't know. I said, let me look. And then we sat there for a minute. She goes, well, where do you feel it in your body? And I said, are you kidding me? What do you mean? I'm supposed to be able to know how I feel by feeling my body? And she goes, you probably don't feel your body. I'm like, no, I don't feel my body. Like, what am I supposed to do? And I'm literally like, it's like she's speaking a foreign language to me. And I'm sitting there and she goes, well, I can tell you what's wrong and I can tell you where it's at because I can see. And I said, okay, wait, you need to unpack this a little more. Like, I feel really confused. And she said, she went through and said, well, I can tell your neck's very stiff. I can tell you seem, your voice rate is very quick. It seems like your heart's racing. She goes, I think you have a lot of fear on board and a lot of anger, and I think you've got a lot of anxiety just because you're fearful and you can't control what's happening. You can't control this situation. And it's really upsetting you. You're angry about it. And I kept saying, well, I'm not angry, and I was when I look back at it. And then I looked at the emotion wheel and I said, okay, I feel uncertain. I started picking out stuff. And I'll tell you, like, today I can sit down and know, like, okay, I can use the feelings in my body. I can use the emotions wheel. Sometimes I don't know right immediately what it is, but I can do that. And the hardest emotion I had to deal with was anger, though, because society tells you you're not supposed to be angry, but anger really isn't the thing that's happening. It's something underneath the anger iceberg that really is happening to you. And so I think I got most of the emotions down, but I kept struggling with anger. And I got married again to a really wonderful guy because I fixed my brain and wasn't attracted to dysfunctional people. And I remember one day, I guess we've been married about 6 months. He goes, God, babe, why are you so angry all the time? He goes, you're not angry at me, but you're just angry the way you talk and the way you act and the things you say about people. You're just angry. And I looked at him and I said, I'm not angry. He goes, yes, you are. You need to deal with this. And I said, okay. I said, am I acting bad to you? He goes, no, it's the way you talk about things and you just get so upset. And I'm like, I do? And I had no idea. I was like, I do? And he goes, well, should I record you? I said, no, I believe you. I really am. I thought I got better. I knew I was angry about men and different things, but I thought I had dealt with that. He goes, you hadn't dealt with it all. So I listened to this sermon from Charles Stanley, old Charles Stanley. I don't know if he's passed yet or if he's just real old. And it was about anger. And I was like, oh my gosh. And so then I went to my counselor. I said, I'm angry. And she goes, oh yeah. I'm like, well, why haven't you been dealing with this? And she said, I figured that your husband would get around to it. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, well, Loree, I couldn't deal with your anger. Like, years ago, I couldn't deal with your anger because that was the only thing keeping you alive.
Wow.
And she goes, if I took that away from you, you wouldn't have been able to live. Wow. And I said, oh, really? And she goes, oh, yeah, that anger was the only thing keeping you trucking. And she goes, and then I just noticed that you got better, but you still had a lot of stuff. She goes, and I figured that marriage relationship was going to draw it out and you'd come ask me about it. And I'm thinking, well, I need to deal with this. Is there a book I can read? What do I need to do? And I still am feisty, I still have and she's like, yeah, there's this book. I get the book and I'm reading this book and I can't remember the name of it. I could send it to you afterwards, but it's the best. It's like a book on anger. Wow. And I'm reading it and I'm going, how have I never known all this stuff? Oh my goodness. And yes, I am angry because I get angry when I don't feel valued.
Yeah.
Or people don't think I'm important enough and I'm like, oh, that is what triggers that anger. And when I'm angry, that's what causes all this. Or I get angry when I feel great pain or vulnerability. And instead of feeling it, I get angry. So I wasn't, even though I thought I was doing better with my emotions and feeling stuff, I wasn't, because I still had this nice little anger thing that I would pull out, this card I'd pull out, so I didn't have to truly feel everything.
It's like a firewall. You just put it up.
I'm telling you. And so then as I started realizing it and trying not to pull that anger card out, you talk about it getting worse before it gets better. I was like, I would rather just be angry. I remember that because I didn't want to feel the yucky, painful, sad, vulnerable feelings. I didn't want to feel, and I had to really, it took several months and stuff to work on it. And I'm still not always there. And I thought, wow, how do people not know about this? I need to let people know about this because I'm a fairly normal person. And I can't imagine society's always having issues with anger and they don't even know what causes it. They don't even know the nuances of it. I'm got an MBA and I run a multi-million-dollar healthcare business and I didn't even understand it and how much it was driving my life and how much I was using it as a defense mechanism, as a way not to deal with the real thing underneath the anger. So that was my journey probably toward the end of my 8 years, is dealing with that anger.
Wow.
And it still is. That's that one, because I'm redhead. It's a daily struggle. It's a daily struggle. I'd love to blame it on that. It's just there's so much pain and insecurity from growing up and what happened that it's an area that's raw all the time. And I always have to pay attention. And I can tell when it's happening. And I have to pay attention. And I'll probably always have it, but I at least know how to deal with it and temper it. Because I just know there's certain things that are my little things that get me. And I don't want to be that person. It's sort of like Peter in the Bible, he had that hot temper and he had that personality. And
out swinging.
I was praying to God one day. I was like, when I was going through this journey with the anger and all this stuff, and I was like, man, I am just like him. When am I going to get to the new Peter, And I heard in my spirit, you're going to get there. You're going to get there. And he's a good lesson in the Bible, a good story for you to read about. He's a really good story for you to read about. So I started reading about Peter. And then I started reading about Peter on the other side. And I'm like, oh, this is something I can aspire to be like, maybe. Because he had the negative traits that I was struggling with. And then let me look at what happened. Well, a lot of yuck happened to Peter along the way to get him on that other side. He had to deny Christ 3 times. He had all sorts of things he did wrong to humble him and to break that spirit a little bit. And I was like, God, I don't want to do that. Can you help me not be broken? I'm breaking now. I just want to get better. But it generally for me, I think the anger thing is I'll get angry real fast. And this is what I've been working on and what I realize. And then I regret it horribly later, just like Peter regretted denying Christ 3 times. And it plagues me for days after I react in an angry fashion. I think God is using that not to make me feel bad, but he's letting that bother me more in my spirit so that I will not want to do it because it's so yucky. The aftermath of it is so yucky for my spirit that it's I guess sort of buffeting me a little bit, saying, hey, this isn't worth it. I know that person deserves for you to tell them off, but you're going to have a week full of you feeling yucky because your spirit, that's not who you want to be anymore.
That's right.
That's not who I want you to be anymore. And I'm not punishing you, but this is not, who you're supposed to be. So it's an interesting journey. It's still a journey. I'm still a feisty redhead. I was telling somebody a story today about me sort of losing it on somebody, and it used to feel good and it doesn't anymore. And I'm so glad that God isn't letting it feel good anymore. I'm so glad my spirit is like, yeah, it's going to feel yucky. Yep. You need to stop doing that.
It comes with a cost.
It comes with a cost, and we're not satisfied anymore. You used to feel good doing that because you felt empowered or you felt like you were righting a wrong or whatever and standing up for yourself. And we let you get by with that for a time, sweetie, but this is not who we want you to be. We know who you can be. And I understand, if God was talking to me, he understands why I had to go through a period of time like that. He's like, you're past that now. you need to do better.
There you go.
You need to do better.
You're getting invited to that next level.
That next level. You level up, chick. Quit acting up, you know.
There you go. I love, as you've recounted some of that you've got your counselor and you've got your husband, and those are just two folks. I know you've probably got more people in your circle and your family and your friends. But it reminds me, so I worked at AT&T for over 20 years. And so from a cell phone perspective, when you're driving along, they have what they call triangulation. And that's what they do is you're driving, you've got your cell phone and you're making your way from, one cell phone tower to the next, but they ping back and forth and they make like a triangle. And that's how they can determine your GPS location is through triangulation. But it's not just one data point. So we can't just believe ourselves, but you've got your counselor, you've got your husband, and you have grown into the ability to trust the feedback where you say, no, you don't have to record me, honey. I trust you. Yeah. And you're talking to your counselor. And I just think that's a beautiful way that we navigate life. Again, we can't believe everything that we think, but God puts us in community and in relationship to continue on this journey.
I love that. That's why you're so good at your job. Look at that. That was a great analogy. I love that.
Yeah.
And it's important to have a counselor. It's important to have a life coach. It's important to have whatever. One thing I'll say is, for me, when I paired my counseling with a support group, because that community of people that have been through what I'd been through, I just started getting better way, way, way quicker, and I think that community piece is the piece that I was missing at one point. Yeah. And so what we do, like on our property, and what I usually recommend for people, and when I go out and talk to people, even churches, I talk to a lot of pastors because, 1 in 3 women is abused, and pastors, they're like, I don't know what to do with this. This is odd. So we're a lot of resource for pastors and churches, and they call us and we try to help them. But I said, it's like a 3-legged stool. It's like, you got your church, which is huge. You need a counselor and you need a support group. You need the 3-legged stool to try to get out of this horrible situation that you're in. And so we offer the support group piece. There's a lot of good counselors out there. And then, of course, you need your pastor and your church family to help surround you when you're going through something like this. I tell the pastors, though, many times they try to stick them in their own church group fresh out of abuse, And I tell them, I'm like, guys, I'll tell you, it is not the right thing to do. And not because your church isn't fabulous and your program isn't fabulous. You don't want that person fresh out of a bad situation or a fresh traumatized situation being in that group. I'll tell you why. And I'll tell you a story about me. And I tell them, I say, I went to a church and I went to a group because I needed to be plugged in. And I overwhelmed that group with just a little smidge of my story, to where they looked at me like I had 3 heads. And I left that church group bawling because they didn't understand. And I felt like I had something wrong with me. I felt more ashamed about myself. And those people had no intention. They were not trying to hurt my feelings. They just couldn't help me process. Yeah. They were just a general church group that wanted to be my friend and whatever, but they were like, what happened? And I said, I've seen this where trauma dumping happens. Once a person starts talking about what happened to them, they really start talking a lot about what happened to them because they finally are getting it out. And it really causes your church family to get really sort of uncomfortable. Yeah. They need a space to do that and get it out of their system a little bit and then come back. I'm not saying don't have them go to church, but this is not the space for you to do this. I want you to go to this Yesterday's Gone remote support group. Do that there. And then let's do regular church group here. Yeah. And I usually recommend don't let them do any church groups till they do this, because they're going to overwhelm the group. Yeah. And then they're going to feel bad. They're going to leave crying. Yeah. And nobody else is going to feel comfortable going to the group because they don't know what to do. Yeah. And everybody feels bad, And so I talk to pastors a lot about that and offer that help because I know how uncomfortable it can feel, and there's no intention ever by those people. And I think they don't have a lot of these kind of groups at church either. And then who wants to go to a support group over abuse and trauma at the church where you go to where you attended with your family in the first place, So
Loree, will you
Yeah.
share about this book because
book,
it's yours.
Well, it's my
You
book.
wrote
It's
it.
my
You
book. Yes,
poured your
yes.
heart into it.
It is a book. It's like 8 years of condensed therapy, and each chapter, it's got 13 chapters, and each chapter has a video. And it has a video here, and then it has basically content, and then it has homework assignments, and this is what we use for our remote support groups. And everybody that attends gets to attend the remote support group for free through Yesterday's Gone. The workbook is $25. You can do it on your own. You can do it with the group. We generally want you to do it as a group. We do remote support groups and not in person because most people just have kids and lives, and especially if they're going through something hard with trauma and abuse, they're probably a single mom at that point. So we do it remotely. And if they can't afford the workbook, we just give it to them. We send it to them. And then they attend the support group for 13 weeks. And it truly, I've seen some amazing things out of it. We always suggest that they're in counseling as well, but it's not a requirement. Sometimes they do the support group before they get in counseling because they just can't face the shame of needing a counselor for some reason. Some people really have a lot of shame around that. Certain cultures have a lot of shame around that. And so at least they're getting something.
Yeah.
Generally, we have 6 to 8 women in a group. We don't do very many because we want them all to talk and answer discussion questions. And I've just seen, like, by week 6 or 7 of the 13 weeks, I don't recognize them anymore. I'm
Wow.
like, are you guys the same people? You start seeing them sit up a little straighter. You start seeing them feel better about themselves. You start seeing that they've been texting each other through the week and, all that. And then the thing I think is most magical is we do this thing at the end of every support group, and you start really noticing the difference in them. We do affirmations at the end of the group. And what it is you've got to say something nice about yourself or something nice that you want to become. And you go around the room, and it seems rather hokey. I remember I was in a group where they did this, and I thought, oh my goodness, this is hokey. But then I felt the impact of it. So you go around and you say, okay, I'm confident. And you go, Sue, I am confident. And Sue says back, Loree, you are confident. And then I say, Angie, I'm confident. And you say back to me, Loree, you are confident. And then I go to the next person. Millie, I'm confident. Loree, you are confident. And you do it. Some of these ladies have a hard time figuring out a word to say that's nice about themselves. And every single group, somebody breaks down bawling, like bawling, because they've just never had someone, the repetitive nature and people saying it back to you, it is so powerful.
Wow.
Like literally. And then what you start seeing is they start changing. And we had a girl in our group, and she really had terrible self-esteem, and she hated that part of the group because she was like, I don't know what to say. I don't know what I should say. And so she like Googled affirmations about women or whatever. And, it'd be like the first 2 or 3 meetings, she just cringed and she'd sort of say it and she hated it. And it was like she was really having a hard time receiving that. But by the middle end of the group, she was just, can I do my affirmation first? And just, it was like it changed her life. And she said, we asked her about it and we said, what happened? Like, what happened that helped you get there? She goes, all those affirmations that I was struggling with saying, I wrote them out and put them on my mirror, and I made myself say it every day. And I kept doing that. And she goes, it worked. It worked. So in the workbook, I have a little section that is under rewiring the brain. And it's something that I did and I came up with for myself. I went to something and somebody was like, yeah, you just need to write down what you want to be and speak it out into the universe. And I thought, well, I'm not a universe person. I'm a God person, but okay, I get it. Whatever floats your boat. And I thought, well, I want to put scripture with my affirmations. And so that for me, he believed in the universe. I believe in God. It's fine. That is his thing. This is my thing. So I wrote down affirmations for my personal life, affirmations for my business life, affirmations for my romantic life, 2 or 3 of them. And then I wrote the scripture, down. Like, so if I said something like, I am confident, then I had the scripture, I'm clothed with strength and dignity, and I laugh without fear of the future. And I would say these out loud, to try to convince myself, of whatever I was if I was trying to be a little different, or if I just needed to remind myself who I was. And it really does work. And the days you need to do it are the days you're not having very good days.
I heard that.
Yeah.
Teresa Poor, our founder, has what she calls a 50 stack. And she'll encourage us to get like a Post-it note stack and write, like you're talking about.
Yeah.
I am a strong and confident woman 50 times. And
Oh,
you got
that's
your 50
wonderful.
stack.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Oh
She's
my
full of them.
gosh. I know she is.
She calls it building evidence.
I love her. She's really amazing. I've met her a couple of times, but you had arranged a meeting, and I've been talking about her all week because, well, she's just a lovely person. She's inspirational, and everything she says is inspirational. I'm like, how is she so good at everything she says? It sounds like I want to take notes,
It's just flowing.
It just flows. And she's really a lovely, genuine person that wants to make the world a better place.
Right. Make an impact on
she
the world.
Does, and she is.
She is
making an impact. She's amazing, and I'm excited. I get to talk to her.
We're blessed to be in this space because of her.
I know. Yeah. I love that. And this is such a cute space too. I love it.
Loree, this has been a very rich and beautiful conversation. Thank you for sharing your personal journey and the mission that you're on.
Oh, thank you.
Is there anything you'd like to share before we close down our time together?
Oh, goodness. The thing that I have to always remind myself about, and I think other people need to be reminded of, is you're not responsible for anyone else's feelings. You're only responsible for you.
Yeah.
And people pleasers and people that struggle with setting boundaries and people that struggle with just life in general, they're many times worried about other people's feelings. And doesn't mean you don't care about other people, but you're not responsible.
Yes.
You can't control what another person feels.
Yeah.
You can only control you. So that's the thing I would say, because I have to remind myself that on a daily basis, because you start worrying about people.
We have to give ourselves that medicine, right?
Exactly.
We learn the lesson. We get knocked down. We got to learn it again.
Yep.
And that's okay, because we're growing one vertebrae at a time.
I love that. One vertebrae at a time. I love that. I'm going to remember that, and I'll think of it.
Yeah.
Yes, all the time.
Thank you again, Loree. And thank you, like I said, for the work that you're doing. Thank you for making this beautiful book with videos and 8 years of your hard-earned lessons accessible to anybody and everybody who needs it.
Thank you.
No limitations.
No limitations.
Open door. Come on in.
Yep.
The water's fine.
Yep.
Well, thank you again. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for one more conversation of the books that shaped me. We're all about connecting with each other. Feel free to reach out to myself, AngieSmithSummitConsulting.com. Loree, how can they find you on the socials?
You can find yesterdaysgone.org, and you can find me under Hidden Treasure Teams.org as well.
That is wonderful. And she's got a book coming out.
I do have a couple of books coming out.
Go ahead.
Okay, well, I wrote a book. You wrote Pieces to Purpose with Sulit Press, and I've got Luminaries, Women Who Shape the Way, that's coming out. It's a joint author book. And then I have the Hidden Treasure series coming out. It is for businesses. So I've got the self-help version of Workbook that we talked about, and then I have the Hidden Treasure workbook that's for businesses, because all of us have stuff. And you can't check your humanity at the door just because you got to work. And so the Hidden Treasure series helps leaders and employees and teams learn about emotions, how to deal with them, how to process them, how to manage boundaries, manage work-life balance, and how to rebuild broken trust, because you're going to have broken trust at times in the workplace. It just is going to happen. Yeah. And so I took a lot of things from this self-help workbook, and I started noticing I was doing a lot of this stuff in my business world. And I'm not saying that employers or whatever should become counselors, but just having a few tools and homework can help everybody sort of figure out how to navigate things and navigate each other and navigate humanity a little bit better, and do so that you have a really productive workplace and a happy workplace.
Amen, sister.
Yeah.
So that's Hidden Treasures. That's the business application version
Yes, it
of
is.
the hard-earned lessons.
Yes, same thing.
About how do we do life together well.
Oh, I love that. Yes, I love that.
Awesome.
Thank
you, Loree.
you.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for your heart. Thank you for your mission. Thank you for your passion. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Have a great one. Thanks for tuning in for another conversation. These conversations are aimed at empowering, educating, and just enlifting each of us up in our journey on life. I am always open to connecting with you as a potential guest or as a sponsorship opportunity. And there's ways to connect with me on my website, angiesmithsummitconsulting.com. You can book some time with me. We can chat, we can explore, and maybe we can go on the next leg of our journey together, which might even involve some life coaching. I'm here to connect, I'm here to grow, and I'm here for you. Have a wonderful rest of your day. I look forward to chatting and visiting again soon. Thank you.